So in this video, I'm going to talk about the Casio F-201WA and why I think it is a phenomenal watch for the money. So to start things off, basic specs of this watch, 34 millimeter case, 10-year battery, water resistant, and that's all they list on the website as far as water resistance. It doesn't have a specific depth or rating or anything like that. My personal experience with this watch, this has been really my only primary watch I've ever had, but since 2017. So back in 2017, I basically got a new job where I was going to need to actually wear a watch because I needed to know the date and time, frequently throughout the day. And I'm the type, especially with the date too, I'm just the type where the same day I'll have to check my watch multiple times to see what the date is, even if I had already checked it before that same day. So that original watch that I purchased in 2017, I literally walked into Fred Meyer and I just needed a watch. And this was the one on the little Casio display that I liked the most. I think at the time it was kind of the simplest, cleanest design, the least chunky, and that's why I chose it. I think at that time it was only like maybe $12 or $13. So that's when I originally bought it. That original one I bought lasted until 2021, and at that point I actually had the watch was still working, but the band had broken. It's a resin band, and basically the place on the band where I was continually pulling it through and where it would get bent a lot back and forth eventually just snapped through. When I did repurchase it in 2021, I got it on Amazon and it was $15.47. Today when I'm recording this, the price is now $19.51. So it has gone up in price, obviously still extremely inexpensive. So aside from when that band on the original watch broke, I did have one other issue with that first one, which was the display. I'm not sure how long I'd had it when this started happening, but it would start lightening up. Basically, the actual, the lettering and the numbers on the screen were still there, but they just appeared washed out. And I don't even know why I thought to do it, but I just would tap it on the screen like that with my fingernail, and that would always make it go back to normal. I washed my hands in it, I went swimming, never worried about it because if something did happen, it's, I could just buy another one. But that being said, I never experienced any issues with, water resistance being a problem. So yeah, this one I've had since 2021, and I've had zero issues with this one. I don't use it as much as I used to because my new job is I don't do any field work anymore. As far as the pros and cons for this, I would say for me, the size was, originally I just needed a watch and it was cheap, but also now I just really like the size of it. I haven't replaced it because it's really, really hard to find a digital watch that isn't much, much larger than this. So I am going to go ahead and throw it on really quick just to kind of give you an idea of how it looks on. So I actually have pretty small wrists, which is why I kind of like a smaller watch. Because otherwise, if I have a huge chunky watch, it's just going to look awkward and make my wrist look even smaller. So this one actually fits pretty well on my wrist. Not super big and blocky. I looked at a lot of G-Shocks after I'd gotten this, and I thought, I want to, upgrade to something that's going to be much heavier duty or, whatever. But there just weren't any G-Shocks that were kind of low profile enough that I would have been willing to wear them. I did look into some Nixons. They did have some that were kind of a nice, clean, simple design that were digital and relatively inexpensive as far as watches go. But I was about to actually order one, and then I looked at how long the battery lasted, and it was, I don't even remember. I think it's maybe like a year or two, and then it's, you have to send it back to the manufacturer. to have the battery replaced. And to me, that was basically unacceptable when I have a $15 watch that, says 10 years, even if it only lasts 5. So other than the actual form factor that I like, I would say obviously price is a big benefit. Um, Honestly, I think durability, although obviously the other one did eventually break, it was the strap. And I would say proportionate to the price that I paid and how I've used it and how I've not been careful with it, I would say that the durability you're getting for the money is pretty good, because I could replace this 10 times over for the price of also relatively inexpensive watch. The other thing I do like about it is I really, really like the information that it has on the screen. It is exactly what I want and nothing that I don't want. It's got day of the week, date, AM or PM, and the time with seconds. So that's just for me. The seconds aren't normally all that important to me, except that sometimes I use it as basically a stopwatch, but without using the stopwatch feature, just because I just want to time something really quick, and it's nice to just have the running seconds there. Other than that, the date comes in handy because I'm really bad about remembering the date. As far as the downsides go, I would say one of the bigger downsides is some of this extra clutter on the watch face. I feel like is pretty unnecessary. Now I understand that this isn't, some fashion item or designer watch, but that being said, I do feel like overall it has a fairly clean look to it, and I just think that the extra, having some of the features, illuminator, 5 alarms, water resistant, and then another WR, dual time, 10-year battery, none of that stuff is necessary. I mean, it's just advertising on the watch, which just seems kind of ridiculous. I mean, I could understand maybe having the alarms. They do have the alarms labeled 1 through 5. So that's technically a feature that is useful if you're using the alarms. But if you could imagine the actual window of the watch just taking up a little more space instead of having that rim with all the extra stuff, I think that that'd be a much cleaner look. I would say the second big downside is the user interface overall. Having just the 4 buttons, so you've got adjust, mode, light, and start stop. Now, I've personally only used this as a watch, and then I do use the stopwatch feature. I've been using the stopwatch feature for years, and I still sometimes, when I'm on a run and I'm tired and maybe I'm not thinking with 100% capacity because I'm winded, I will still occasionally hit the wrong button. It doesn't happen that often, but I will hit the wrong button, and it's pretty frustrating. It's just having 4 buttons that are all the exact same shape and size, trying to remember which corner you're supposed to hit for certain functions. It's not great. And it's really more of a problem when it comes to some of the other features, like just when I have to change the time for daylight savings time, it's not super intuitive. It takes me, a few minutes to figure it out every time because I don't do it that frequently. And then when I first started using the watch, I had at some point accidentally set an alarm without realizing it, and it was set in the middle of the night, and it actually took me a little bit of time to realize that it was waking me up. It was pretty quiet, so it was like not waking me up enough to where I was realizing what was happening, but eventually I realized that there was an alarm that was set, because they have those little marks at the bottom, and it was showing something. I finally realized that's what it was, and that it was sort of waking me up every night, and I was able to get it turned off. But even turning it off with the instructions present seemed like it was more difficult than it should have been. So, obviously the UI is not optimized necessarily by modern standards, but it does work, and it gets the job done for the most part. Biggest downside, you want something that you can maybe dress up a little bit. This is not going to be great for that. It's going to look pretty out of place on a nicer outfit. But as far as just daily wearing it around, I've actually been surprised. I would have expected after having worn this for this many years, more people would have noticed and pointed out maybe like, hey, are you wearing like a super cheap Casio watch? But I've actually, the only time anyone has ever pointed it out was when it was not on my wrist and it was, taken off, and somebody noticed it sitting next to other people's personal effects, and oh, that looks like a retro watch, made a comment like that. And you know and other than that, though, I think most people just don't notice it at all. It just sort of, like I said, it's pretty compact and doesn't draw a lot of attention. So if you're looking for a digital watch that is inexpensive and gets the job done but isn't super chunky or large, I would definitely recommend checking this watch out. And I'll put a link in the description if you want to check it out on Amazon.